Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 713. I started off with e4. My opponent went d6, and I went d4, just putting two pawns in the center. And now he goes knight f6, which is the Pirc defense, or maybe the modern. No, it's not the modern, because the modern is leaving the knight back and just putting the bishop out there with the fianchetto. So the Pirc defense can also lead to the variation of the Philidor, so sometimes you can get into something called the neo-Philidor this way. So I went with bishop to d3. You can see it's not the top choice in the database, but there's actually a number of ways that white can play here for an advantage. The main move is knight c3, but it always seemed a little strange to me to be blocking the c pawn when obviously, often black intends to fianchetto that bishop, and so I want to put a pawn on c3 rather than the knight. But certainly knight c3 is a fine way to play as well. I think the main thing against an opening like this is just to pick a system and stick with it and learn how to play it. Because most of these systems will lead to some kind of white edge. Not that it's a losing opening for black, but it just gives an advantage to white, a little more space. So anyway, I go with bishop d3. This is okay. He goes with g6. So clearly in Pirc territory. And now I go f4. Let's back up. If he had continued e5, I think this is what I was talking about, you can actually get into kind of a Philidor where, say if I played knight f3, you could take and I take back, and this is a lot like a Philidor defense. But there are other lines along there after knight f3, so actually the main move here is c3, just kind of shoring up the center. And then there's some kind of crazy line involving d5, or just a normal line involving knight to c6. And so that's how you get from the Pirc defense into something like the Philidor. But in this game, he stayed in Pirc lines by playing g6. And I went with f4. So f4 is not in the database, or, well, it has no games in it. But I looked at it with the chess engine. It's fine. If you can get away with playing this move, you know, you've got three pawns in the center, and you still have this fourth pawn ready to help support the center against the bishop's attack along this diagonal. It seems like that's a fine way to play, and the chess engine agrees. The main thing to check for is that make sure there's no checks on this diagonal before you push that f pawn forward, and make sure you have time to get your knight to f3 and castled before anything bad happens, and you should be fine. So anyway, he went with bishop g7, and there's very few games in the database here, so we'll just look at the moves. So I played knight f3, he castled, I castled, and now he went knight a6, which is a little bit strange. There are still a couple moves in the database. One of them is this c5. I think I mentioned this idea, and I think it's very logical here. He's got a bishop along this diagonal. He's going to push that c pawn forward and just try to directly go after this pawn. I would probably respond with c3 here. Or he could be developing his knight this way, knight bd7, after which he could maybe get away with playing e5. So all this leaves white with some edge here. Let's say I go c3, but not a huge edge. It's not like black has made any mistakes here. It's just a slight opening advantage for white. So actually, I make the first mistake. I was mentioning in the description of the video, it's a contest to see who can make the most mistakes. Well, I start off the contest by playing bishop to e3, and if you want to think about it, maybe you can see why this is a mistake. Okay, if you can pause the video and think about it some more if you want to. What was the idea of bishop e3? I just wanted to support this pawn against a potential bishop attack, but I was forgetting about some other features here. And after he takes, I was planning to take back with the pawn. It's all pretty logical. I've got this strong pawn center supported by my bishops. I would think I would be very happy with this position, but let's see. He has another way of playing. Yeah, that's the way it went. If he plays with... right. We went down this path, but he didn't follow it up correctly. He played this move, and then he played rook to e8. He needed to follow it up with knight to b4, and that's the move that makes my setup look a little bit silly. I don't want to give up my bishop for his knight, right? Because, I've got the bishop pair. It's one of my... he has the bishop pair too. If he wins that, he'll have the advantage of the bishop pair, and I won't have a lot. and compensation, except for, I guess I still have the big center. But I don't really want to give up that bishop. But there's nowhere the bishop can go to escape the knight. If I drop my bishop back this way, then my my e-pawn is hanging. So so that's why bishop e3 here is the first mistake. The chess engine says I should push on with e5 and keep that opening advantage that way. Okay, so I play bishop e3. That's the first mistake made by me. He takes. That's correct. And then instead of following up the night before, he plays rook to e8. So he makes the second mistake and the third one. Yeah, I think he made more mistakes than me. I went knight c3 and he went e5. So that's the third mistake, his second mistake. So it's just not a good move. I can win a pawn here. So it's just a pawn sacrifice of a center pawn without compensation. So I start out okay. Once again, f takes, d takes, similar to the last time, I guess, when I made the mistake and my opponent started off okay, but then didn't follow it up. The logical follow-up here is taking with the knight. I don't know why I didn't think of this. I remember talking about this position a little bit. What I was thinking of was taking with the pawn. Do I take with the pawn? Then he moves his knight out to g4, hitting my bishop, hitting the pawn, and he's got 3 pieces on the pawn. So he's just rounding it right back up. But of course there's 2 ways to take that pawn, and I just did not consider knight e5 at all. So that's the 4th mistake overall, 2 apiece at this point, right? That's my second mistake, and no, his third. We're up to 5. Let's see, how do I count this? My mistake, his mistake, his mistake, my mistake. Yeah, we're even at 2 mistakes apiece. Because I went d5 here. And, well, it's not horrible. This is not a horrible position. White's a little better again after the various mistakes. But anyway, I could have just been winning. So he went knight b4 now. But it's not so dangerous here. I can drop my bishop back and keep the pawn defended. So everything is okay at this point, and now he makes his third mistake, so he goes bishop to g4. And I'm calling this a mistake. Kind of every move for the next 2 or 3 moves is a mistake by black. But this is the first move, and I guess it's the beginning of a bad plan, because the bishop has nothing to do on this square but trade itself off for the knight. And it's just not a good exchange for black, and leaves me with all this pressure on the f-file. That's really what goes wrong there. So knight to g4 is the move that should have been played, and we would have continued in a game where black has some counterplay, and white has some ideas too. I can kick this knight back at some point. I might bring my bishop to safety first, but seems like I'm okay. I do have to worry about, let's think about this. I do have to worry about queen to b3 check, so maybe I can't really move my bishop away from that diagonal. I might have to give up let him take that bishop and then chase his knight back. Anyway, so knight g4 would have been a good move there. Bishop g4 is the beginning of a bad plan, so I labeled that move as the mistake. I just kicked the bishop, ask it. I kicked the knight. I wasn't too worried about the bishop. It can't do a lot of damage there, and I wanted to get rid of the knight first. So he takes, resolves things over here, but now there is all this pressure on the f-file that he's created by that exchange, and now he makes his next, and I think this is the final mistake, isn't it? Yeah, so he won the contest. He made more mistakes than me. Also, making the last one is bad, but he's in bad shape in any case. He should just retreat the knight, and then I can win a piece here. So he's already losing a piece. He can't answer bishop g5 in any reasonable way. All he can do is go for compensation. The chess engine gives this as the best line here. Knight to c5. Go ahead and grab this piece, and I might as well keep trading because I'll go into an endgame a piece up, and he can get his knight to b3 and push my pieces to some awkward squares. So that's the best he can get, but the material is even. I mean, same number of pawns. I'm just a piece up. I have an extra bishop that he doesn't have, and eventually I'll be able to unwind and win that game. So that would have been best play for black at this point, but a5 is just giving up even more. I could have taken the knight right away, but the move I played, bishop g5, is not bad either. Saul is winning. And so he dropped his knight back now. I win this piece. But now his knight is not so quickly getting to this square. He's kind of wasted the tempo compared to the other lines. So I go for this endgame where I'm a piece up. And then, let's see, he brings his rook out to the c file. He could start the journey of the knight coming out to here and to here, but I have time to get my bishop out of the way and get my rook into the game, so my rook won't be pushed to an unfortunate square. So that's why this variation is better for me. Anyway, he develops his rook here. I play bishop to d3, and he goes knight to c5 now. Let's say I save the bishop. He plays king g7, hitting my rook. Just drop this back. He brings his knight into b3, and I just bring my rook over to d1. I mean, this is a good piece, but all of my pieces got out. And you know, one advantage of that piece is he's controlling the c1 square, so I can't directly oppose his rook. So I have to work a little bit to arrange some trade-offs, but some trades to get into a simpler win. But it wasn't too hard, so let's just step through the rest of the game here. Yeah, taking advantage of my passed pawn here. He gave up another pawn there in order to get some activity with his rooks. It's not a bad trade-off, really, but there's just no way that he can win this game. And eventually, at this point, he decided to resign. He's got 2 rooks hanging, so there's not much he can do at this point. Anyway, it's kind of a fun game. Hope you guys like this video. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.